Hello there and welcome back. Today we're doing something a little different, venturing into spaces we often think of as safe havens. You know, places filled with knowledge, quiet contemplation, and, well, sometimes, the truly unexpected. We're going to share a collection of unsettling true stories today, accounts that actually happened inside libraries. Our goal is really to bring these narratives to life for you, to pull directly from these personal accounts and understand those moments when, comfort just turned into dread. There's just something inherently kind of unnerving about a library after dark isn't there. Or even just deserted, that quiet can become the perfect backdrop for some really unsettling encounters. So, let's get into these stories. Okay, our first story comes from a university student, someone really juggling a lot. Dual degree, 6 courses a semester, an internship, you get the picture. So the university library was basically their sanctuary, open until midnight. It offered the quiet they desperately needed, especially with, loud roommates. So picture this, it's a Wednesday night, 2 exams the next day. They head to the library after a really long day. It's about 9 p.m. when they arrive. The library's huge, still kind of busy, but it starts quieting down a lot by 10. Our student, they plan to stay right until midnight, just grinding away. They pick a table that's sort of sandwiched between 2 bookshelves, for maximum privacy. But then this man, maybe late 20s, walks past loads of empty tables and sits diagonally across from her at her table. He even smiles as he puts his books down. And immediately this, wave of discomfort just washes over her. She tries to ignore it, tries to focus, but that thought just keeps nagging. Why her table? So she's trying to review slides on her laptop, and he speaks up, asks if she's taking some specific economics course. She just politely says no. He keeps going, though, complaining his professor was a bitch and gives pop quizzes every day. She just gives a polite, wow, that sounds tough, hoping that's the end of it. But her concentration, totally shot. She just has this feeling he's going to talk again. And sure enough, she looks up, and he's just looking at her, smiling with his lips closed. She looks down fast, thinking maybe she should move, maybe just leave entirely. Then he asks her name. Just on instinct, she gives a fake one, Chelsea, in his response. It just sends this chill down her spine. He immediately says, "You have such blue eyes, Chelsea." That was it, the turning point. It was suddenly crystal clear he wasn't there to study. And the fact he looked maybe close to 30 just made it even creepier. So she decides to test him. "What's your economics professor's name?" she asks. He pauses. Then says, "Professor Davis." She pushes a little. "First name." He just shakes his head no. Okay, that's all she needed. She quickly pulls up ratemyprofessor.com on her phone, and guess what? Only one Professor Davis listed for their school, a calculus professor, and the last reviews were years ago. So he was definitely lying. She knew right then she had to get help. She gets up, feeling his eyes just burning into her back as she walks towards the security worker at the front door. She quickly explains, tells the guard, "Look, this man is really creeping me out, and I honestly don't think he's even a student." The security worker, thankfully, takes her seriously. He goes over to the man, asks for his student ID. The guy makes a show of searching, then says, I must have left it at my dorm." Security asks, "Which dorm building?" The guy hesitates, clearly lying, and says, "I honestly don't remember what it's called." Okay. Right. So the security worker immediately escorts him out of the library. She feels this wave of relief, but, temporary. The security worker tells her, "Be careful walking back to your dorm." She stays until midnight like she planned, but her focus is completely gone, just distracted. Around midnight, she packs up, leaves through the same exit the man was escorted out of. He's not there. But as she's walking back, the campus is deserted, really quiet. She's getting close to her dorm, and she hears it. At least one loud sound, like a shoe hitting the concrete right behind her. She whips around, nothing. Nobody there. But she knows she heard footsteps. So she starts to run, which, with a heavy backpack, is hard. Ugh. And that was the mistake. The second she starts running, she hears it again, clear as day, running footsteps right behind her. She turns, and there he is, that man from the library, sprinting towards her. She screams at the top of her lungs, but it only lasts a second. He tackles her straight to the ground, clamps a hand over her mouth. He hisses at her, "You better shut up or I'll kill you." She genuinely thought, this is it, my life is over. Then he gets up and starts dragging her by the throat, pulling her off the main path, out of sight, towards the woods right by the dorms. She's desperate. Somehow she manages to wrench his hand away just enough to scream again. Just one more scream, and someone heard it. 2 guys come running over, yelling, "Hey! Stop!" The man lets go instantly and just bolts, disappearing into the woods. The 2 guys reach her, asking if she's okay, but she's just in total shock, bawling her eyes out, They call university police right away. Despite the trauma, she manages to, get it together enough to explain everything that happened. The police confirm her description with the security guard, and crucially, they get clear footage of the guy's face from the library security cameras. They send his picture out to all the students. And that same night, believe it or not, an anonymous tip comes in. It leads the police to this late-night dive bar near campus, and they arrested him right there. The trauma she went through, though, immense. Just a stark reminder of how lucky she was, really, compared to how it could have ended.
What's really striking about that account is how it follows such a classic escalation pattern. You see this with predatory behavior. It starts subtly, right?
Yeah.
Breaching a social norm, like taking that occupied table when there are plenty of empty ones.
Right, that immediate oddness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it quickly moves to boundary testing. When she tried to shut down the conversation about the professor.
He immediately got personal.
Precisely. Straight to, "You have such blue eyes, Chelsea." That shift is critical. It's not just about trusting your instincts, though that's important. It's about recognizing this deliberate progression. It's designed to isolate, to test reactions, and ultimately to control.
And that progression, from just choosing a seat to a full-blown physical attack, it happens so fast. It really makes you wonder how often those little tests, those boundary pushes, happen in public spaces without escalating that far.
That's a key question. Predators often rely on that initial discomfort being brushed off, right? People thinking, oh, maybe I'm overreacting. But the lie, that's often a critical indicator. When you couldn't name the professor or the dorm.
Yeah, the story fell apart.
Exactly. That signals a deeper, deceptive intent beneath whatever surface reason he gave for being there. And often, these individuals can appear calm, maybe even charming initially, which is part of what disarms potential victims. It's sort of the predator's paradox. Their apparent composure masks this intense, underlying malicious goal. It's not always about immediate aggression, but this calculated push against boundaries until they find vulnerability.
That's a really chilling insight. Okay, so from that terrifying campus encounter, let's shift gears. We're going to a very different kind of library horror now. This one's from a child's perspective, which highlights a completely different kind of vulnerability. This next story, it's described as a blurry childhood memory. The narrator thinks they were probably 5 or 6, definitely before age 7. It starts pretty innocently. A trip to the local town library with their mom and toddler brother. They'd just gotten ice cream cones at the mall. So they get to the library, and the mom lets the narrator play computer games in the kids section while she, does her own thing nearby. After a while, the narrator gets bored of the games, so they get up and start wandering the aisles in the kids section, looking for I Spy books. This section was apparently way in the back corner of the library. As they're walking, they hear this soft sound from behind. They turn around, don't see anything, just bookshelves. Then suddenly, half of a grown man's face peered around the shelf and said peekaboo.
Oh.
And the narrator remembers just laughing, like zero sense of danger at this point.
The man did it again, ducked back, popped out, they laughed again. Totally innocent fun from a kid's perspective. Then he asks what they're looking for. The narrator says, the I Spy books. He offers to help, comes over, actually takes their hand and leads them right to the I section. And sure enough, there are like 5 I Spy books. The narrator picks their favorite, the treasure hunt one. Then the man suggests, hey, let's go sit down and play. He leads them over to a little table in the corner near some kids' computers, and they start looking through the book together. This goes on for a bit, and he starts asking questions, personal questions. The one that really sticks out in the memory is, who are you here with? And the narrator, being 5 or 6, just answers honestly, my mom and my little brother. Okay, so at some point during this, he mentions or implies that there's a kids' playroom downstairs. Now, the narrator at that age had no idea the library even had a downstairs. The man suggests they take the I Spy book down there to play. He leads them towards this door, which, it turns out, did lead to the library's basement. Apparently it was used for events, club meetings, that kind of thing. And yes, down there was a small playroom for kids. So the man leads them right into this little playroom. There are toys, Legos, a Lego table. He puts the I Spy book down on the Lego table. And this is where the memory gets really dark and uncomfortable. He starts, in the narrator's words, forcibly getting me to play with the toys. That's when things started to feel really wrong. Right around this time, an announcement comes over the library loudspeaker. A female librarian's voice says, "Will Liam come to the front, please? Your mother is looking for you." We assume Liam is the narrator's actual name. The man's reaction is immediate. He goes straight to the light switch and turns off the lights, plunges the room into pitch blackness. Then he says, "In the dark, we're gonna play a hide and seek." And the narrator says this was the first moment they felt genuinely freaked out, scared. They started yelling for their mom. The man kept telling them to be quiet, his voice getting louder, and they could feel him getting closer in the dark until he actually put his hands on them. Thankfully, somehow the narrator managed to bolt. Ran past him out the door of the playroom. They ran down the dark basement hallway, back towards the stairs. They described it like that feeling you get as a kid, running up the basement stairs after you turn the light off. But, quote, 100 times worse because I genuinely was scared I was going to be grabbed. They made it up the stairs, back to the main floor, and just ran straight for the front desk, still yelling for their mom. And there she was at the front desk with some librarians. The narrator remembers the absolute relief on their mom's face seeing them. The narrator immediately blurts out, "There was some man, he took me downstairs." And their mom, understandably, literally lost it. The next thing the narrator clearly remembers is police officers searching the building. But the man was gone. Must have slipped out another way. They remember talking to a woman, probably police or social services, who asked very careful, delicate questions. But even now, the narrator says they haven't really talked much about that very uncomfortable memory with their mom. Just awful.
Yeah, that is awful. And it's just a chillingly textbook example of child grooming, unfortunately. It starts exactly as described, building rapport, creating that false sense of safety, the peekaboo game, offering help, the shared activity with the book.
Making himself seem harmless, fun even.
Precisely. He's weaponizing the child's natural curiosity and, importantly, their inherent trust in adults and authority figures. He creates a situation where the child willingly goes with him. And the key tactic, the huge red flag, is isolation, suggesting that secret playroom downstairs is purely about getting the child away from their parent, away from any supervision.
Right, that's where the control really shifted. And the lights.
Yeah.
Turning off the lights in that small room. That feels like such a deliberate, terrifying move. What does that do psychologically?
Oh, it's incredibly effective for disorientation and control.
Yeah.
Suddenly, this space that maybe felt okay a second ago becomes completely terrifying and alien. It triggers immediate fear, amps up the vulnerability, and makes it much harder for the child to think clearly or resist. Their senses are overwhelmed, they're isolated, and it primes them for further manipulation or worse.
Wow.
The goal is to shift rapidly from that friendly interaction to total dominance, often using fear, like the hide-and-seek game in the dark, to keep them quiet and compliant. It's just a terrible illustration of how predators exploit innocence and the perceived safety of public places.
A really stark reminder. Okay, for our last story tonight, we're shifting focus again. This time as an adult working alone. It highlights that unique vulnerability of being the last one left in a big, quiet building after hours. So this narrator was in their early 20s, working the night shift at a local public library, like a second job. 3 nights a week, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. The routine was pretty standard closing stuff. Lock up after the last patrons leave, shut down all the computers, do some basic cleaning, organizing, restock returned books and DVDs, take out the garbage. Then they could finally leave. So it's a Friday night. Getting close to 9 p.m. closing time, most of the other staff have already gone home. It's just the narrator and one other female librarian left. They make the closing announcements, the last couple of patrons leave, the other librarian heads out right at 9 p.m., so now the narrator is alone. They lock the front door, start tidying up, fixing chairs, emptying garbage bins into a larger bag. Then comes the part where they have to take the garbage out to the dumpster, which is around the side of the building. They mention unlocking the front door again to do this. They note how incredibly quiet it is outside. The library's kind of tucked away, not near any main roads. After dumping the trash, they come back inside, carefully relocking the front door behind them. Okay, almost done. The only task left is restocking the returned books and DVDs onto the shelves. They decide to start with the DVDs quick job, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. While they're doing this, putting DVDs away, they thought for sure I heard something come from one of the book aisles, like a sound. So they stop, go investigate. And they find an open book just laying on the floor. It looked like it had, quote, clearly just fallen off the shelf. They pick it up, put it back, maybe pause for a second, wondering, how did that happen? But then get back to the DVDs. Okay, DVDs done. They grab the box of returned books, already sorted alphabetically, and start shelving them, just wanting to finish up and head home. And then, not long after, they hear another noise nearby. And they think, okay, 2 times in less than 20 minutes, that was no coincidence. Something's definitely off. They put the box of books down and walk through the aisles again, listening. This time they find another 2 books on the ground in another aisle. And that's when it hits them, that cold realization. Someone was in here. Someone else was in the library with them. So, trying to sound braver than they felt, they walk out into the main open area near the tables and call out, "Excuse me, the library's closed." Just silence. Dead silence. Then they hear something from across the library coming from the children's section. They start walking cautiously towards the sound, and as they get closer, it starts to sound like some rabid animal making growling sounds, really guttural noises. And they can also hear the distinct sound of books being thrown onto the floor. Thump, thump. It seems to be coming from one specific aisle in the children's section. They sort of build up their courage, take a deep breath, and peek down that aisle, and what they see is some woman wearing a nightgown, just throwing random books off the shelves, making these disgusting animal-like sounds, growling guttural noises. The narrator doesn't say a word, doesn't confront her, they just immediately turn and run. They run straight to the library office where the phone is. Remember, this was before everyone had cell phones readily available. They get inside the office, lock the door, and crucially, close the blinds on the window that looks out into the main library area. Then they dial 911. They tell the operator there's a sickly woman in the library, maybe needing an ambulance. The operator asks if they approached her. The narrator says no, she looked like she could be dangerous. Then the 911 operator asks, is the woman still in the same spot? So the narrator takes another deep breath, forces themselves to open the blinds just a crack to look, and they scream because the woman is right there, right on the other side of glass, staring in. They said her pupils were so big that she looked demonic, just utterly terrifying. They frantically tell the operator, she's right outside the office, she's right here. The woman starts banging on the glass, screaming just gibberish. Noise, not words. She tries the office door handle, rattles it. When it doesn't open, she turns, walks a few steps, and just sits down on a chair nearby, directly facing the office window, just sitting there, watching. The operator asks the narrator to keep watching her if it's safe. The narrator notes the woman looks really unsteady, wobbly, as she sat down. They remember thinking she was definitely high out of her mind, or something similar. Thankfully, help arrives quickly. 2 police cars and an ambulance pull up. The woman apparently tried to fight the officers, so she was put in handcuffs. But nothing she was saying made any sense at all. She was eventually put in the back of the ambulance and taken away. The narrator says they never found out what was actually wrong with her, what she might have been on, or even how she got inside. Maybe slipped in while they took the trash out. Maybe she'd been hiding somewhere inside before they locked up. They never got answers. But needless to say, the whole experience made being alone in the library after closing feel pretty unsettling from there on out.
Wow. Yeah, that story just powerfully highlights the vulnerability of lone workers, doesn't it? Especially late at night in these large, echoey public buildings. And those initial anomalies of books falling off the shelves.
Yeah, easy to dismiss at first.
Right. But they serve as these critical, subtle indicators that maybe something is wrong, that there might be a security breach. It underscores how important it is not to just write off those little disturbances. It also really exposes a common potential weak point in closing procedures. That moment you have to unlock a door, even briefly, like for taking out the trash.
Creates an opportunity.
Exactly. It can create an uncontrolled access point, even if it's just for a minute or two. Enough time for someone who might be hiding nearby or even already inside to move around or reveal themselves.
It's really unnerving how a totally mundane task like taking out garbage suddenly becomes this huge potential security risk in that context. And once someone in that kind of disturbed state is inside, what are the real challenges? For the staff member, obviously, but even for the police who arrive.
The challenges are immense. When you're dealing with someone experiencing an acute behavioral disturbance, whether it's from a mental health crisis, substance use, or something else, their behavior is inherently unpredictable. Actions can range from just property destruction, like throwing books, to potentially sudden violence. Communication might be completely nonsensical, like the gibberish the woman was screaming, which makes trying to de-escalate the situation incredibly difficult, if not impossible. You often can't even figure out their intent.
Right.
So for the staff member, like the narrator here, the absolute priority has to be personal safety. Retreating to a secure location, locking the door, calling for professional help, that was exactly the right thing to do. And for the first responders, the police and paramedics, it requires specialized training to manage these volatile situations safely for themselves, for the individual in crisis, and for anyone else who might be around. This story is just a really stark reminder that even seemingly quiet, benign environments like libraries need robust safety protocols. And we always have to be aware of that unpredictable human element.
So we've heard 3 really different, really chilling stories tonight. What does it all mean, really? I think these narratives, each unsettling in its own way, they just paint such a vivid picture of how quickly a place we think of as familiar and comforting, like a library, can actually become a stage for some of our deepest fears.
They really drive home the vulnerability of individuals, don't they? Whether it's a student just trying to study, an innocent child looking for a book, or an employee just doing their job late at night, faced with unexpected malice or just profoundly unpredictable behavior.
And what's truly compelling, I think, is that these aren't ghost stories, right? They're not supernatural. These are true accounts of human encounters. And arguably, that makes them far more terrifying because they're real. They could happen. They really force us to maybe re-examine our assumptions about safety in everyday public spaces. And that kind of raises a question for you, listening at home. When you think about the places you consider safe, the places you go all the time, how does hearing stories like these maybe change your perception of them? Even just a little. It definitely gives you pause. Well, thank you for joining us on this rather unsettling journey through the quiet aisles today. We hope these stories gave you something to think about, something to ponder, and maybe, just maybe, a new appreciation for the unexpected. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and maybe keep an extra eye open.